Hello, I am here with Amit. Is that how you say your name, Amit?
Yeah.
Right. You were formerly with the DNC, is that right?
Yeah, I was a youth member.
A youth member. Okay, and where are you now?
Now I'm conservative, I guess you could say.
Are you still working in politics or are you doing something else?
No, I interned most recently at Red Letter AI, which is an AI company that was working on campaigning for Republican campaigns. They're still active.
Interesting.
They're still an ongoing startup, but I stopped recently.
Okay.
But
Um, well, we were going to discuss a few topics, but to start with, why don't you tell us about China?
I think most conservatives have realized that China is so with I think we always have to look at Thiel is probably the best presenter on the conservative thesis for China. Donald Trump, I think, really doesn't have a good understanding of China. One thing about China that's always so interesting is a lot of the neoliberal capital problems that happened, right? So after Bill Clinton was president, a lot of the neoliberal capitalist policies, a lot of middle class Americans and Midwestern Americans, I think, realized that China basically replaced a lot of our manufacturing capabilities. They took away our jobs essentially, right? A lot of the neoliberal capitalism and Democrats in the early 2000s, so pre-Bush, basically sold out a lot of our industrial bases and essentially a large part of our U.S. economy that was for this lower middle class slash middle class Americans, right? These are Midwest Americans, right? These people were
Well, is that really true though? Because I think that well, to go back a few years, I think that the reason why America had such strong manufacturing after World War II was, well, one, it was because they had built up a lot of factories and a lot of property, plant, and equipment. But also Japan and Europe were devastated by the war. And so there wasn't a whole lot of competition.
right. They could build new, essentially. They could build new factories. Whereas our
They had to
factories.
build new factories.
So
Right.
you argue it's a bubble, essentially, that American labor could never have beaten. I don't know.
Well, I think that there was an artificially prosperous time for American manufacturing right after World War II.
Mhm.
And Europe did not become a manufacturing powerhouse because they have their own internal corruption and bureaucratization problems. And I think that part of the reason why America has lost manufacturing jobs to China is just that we're returning to the historical norm. China is becoming a powerful and productive country again after a 100-year hiatus with communism.
Mhm.
So, in a
But
way,
yeah,
it's true that the neoliberal policies, as you're calling them,
right.
played a role in that. But I think it's just because we're returning to the historical norm.
But
So
you
I
have to. There's a political anger, right? These people want their factories back. They want the jobs back. If you ask people to
Right, but so what do you think? Do you think that free trade is a good policy overall, or are you against free trade?
I would consider myself a libertarian, and so I think it depends on what industry, right? I think some industries they're so important where we really do need, uh,
Right. Yeah, so I
security.
agree that with strategic industries, we can't have free trade. We need to have some of those in America.
But
But what about non-strategic industries like making car parts or plastic parts?
well, again, there's always a debate: is that a security issue or not? I would say to the level we have with China today, it is an issue. In the early 2000s, it wasn't as bad, right? So the Chinese thing has like it's like I think now what 80% of the stuff we consume is just Chinese, like it's just plastic, Labubus, all of it, right? Um, but in like the 2000s, like right after the like neoliberal capitalist policy started applying, so a lot of those were government policies, right? Like they just stopped giving subsidies to the factories, and they stopped giving subsidies to companies like Ford and GM and all that, right? They cut back on the spending. And like it wasn't a bad issue. Like look, 20 or 10 years ago, if you ask people at think tanks like if there was a Chinese problem, most of them were going to say this single line. They're going to say if we make China more capitalistic and more like American capitalism, eventually their political system will become more democratic. Now that theory failed.
Right. Yeah, I think that theory was crazy from the
Yeah.
beginning, and we
But that's
certainly
like
know now that it did not
that's
happen.
what they thought was normal. They thought that the Chinese problem would figure itself out. It would never be an issue like it is today. We're relying on an actual semi-communist or at least nationalistic, socialistic company that, or sorry, country that really doesn't like us, right? The Chinese culturally really don't. I mean, they see Americans as like kind of lazy. Like they realized that we had our great empire and that we were culturally the best. But now, if you ask a Chinese person, what do you think is better, Chinese culture or American culture? They'll say like very, very like notoriously, we've been around for thousands of years. We've existed before America. We'll exist at like we're gonna be here no matter. They expect us to crash and fall, basically, right? They expect us to like American society to basically destroy itself. I think COVID
Right.
is a great example because COVID was a blessing for the Chinese, but a curse for us Americans, I think, and for American society in large.
I think in some ways they're correct that America is a collapsing empire.
Yeah, and they know this. Like they're literally trying to think of the end game, right? They're trying to build policies and like they're trying to make sure their society lasts for another 1,000 years. Whereas in America, we worry so much about like the midterms or the next
Right.
presidential election. We don't worry about,
Yeah,
oh
the
shit.
midterms, that's not exactly a 1,000-year horizon.
Yeah, like American politicians don't focus on the long term, whereas the Chinese, they're the complete opposite. They're obsessed with the long term. I think that's just one of the things of like American history versus Chinese history. They're so analytical and so understanding, whereas in American history, a lot of it is just propaganda, right? A lot of it is just like, you know,
There's probably some propaganda in China as well.
yeah, but the Chinese are just not as emotional. You know, they just
Okay.
I would say their culture and society is more analytical, and they're realists. They're geopolitical realists. They understand that America has had a hegemony over world control since World War II, right? Since Europe fell, and they understand that Europe destroyed China, you know, and they're scared. They're really scared of that happening again, right? To them, if they are weak, it'll just be a return. Like they have their center of embarrassment, right? And they don't want to be embarrassed again. As Americans, we don't have this. We've never been, beaten down. Like imagine this. Imagine if Nazi Germany was really powerful and had actually dominated Europe and had really put America in an incredibly scary place. Like imagine if they had like, I don't know, actually bombed New York or actually had like taken over a city in America. That's
Right.
basically what happened to China. Now China has like that historical memory of like, oh shit, they tortured our wives, they killed our children, they conquered us. So they're scared for that to happen again. And that applies to all Chinese thinking. When they think about AI, when they think about defense, when they think about technology, when they think about interacting with the outside world, they're always remembering that they were once conquered by Western powers. And that's like when they deal with Western powers, they might act nice, they might treat us like equals, but they know in the back of their mind that we could like we've done it before. Like they saw a lot of the Chinese like historical people, a lot of the thinkers now, they were alive when we dropped the bomb on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, right? A lot of the core communist scholars mention like, hey, Western powers have played so much in Asia. Why shouldn't China own its own? Like, why shouldn't they have control of the South China Sea? Why shouldn't they control Asia? You know.
Mhm.
So this is a big issue, very clearly.
Which do you think is a bigger threat to liberty in America, the Chinese government or the American government?
The Chinese.
The Chinese government. Okay, why?
It's two things. First of all, we underassumed a threat. So this is another thing I see on the right. We focus so much on the cultural issues in America or like the left, but you realize if you put up Joe Biden against Xi Jinping, who's more scary?
Um,
They're different leaders. One is a president of a supposedly free country, right? I mean, Biden. I wouldn't. 4 years of Biden.
they both have an administration which implements their policies.
Right. But it's like X's the most powerful dictator in America, or sorry, most
The
powerful
world.
dictator in history. And it's crazy. I see the left, they're arguing Trump is a dictator, and you're like, okay, then why do you defend socialism, right? Like they're pro China now. A lot of the
Hmm.
DNC people are actually pro China now. It recently in Texas, they banned Chinese ownership of land, right? So foreign ownership of land, especially from China, because we were having issues with it. Gene Wu, one of the Texas Democrat top guys, I don't know if he's like an executive director or whatever, or I think he's a senator or congressman. He basically came out and was like, "Oh no, I'm against that. I think that's not freedom." And it's like, how are you on
Crazy.
the side of the CCP? Like, what? How does this make sense? You know. So
What do you think about America allying with Russia?
I think that's a good idea. Like I think there are
I
ways
do
where
too.
we can work with Russian ideology, because the Russians don't like the Chinese either, right? Like they have an issue. You know, they're not ideologically the same. Russia is like a post-capitalistic socialist, right? Whereas like China. I wouldn't say China is actually communist. I would say they're more like just state-backed capitalism with a lot of taxes.
Yeah, and the economic policies are not the only thing.
Hmm.
Like obviously the Communist Party now is probably more nationalist than classically communist.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I've read now, so I'm familiar with some of the text, but it's like the Russian people ideologically who really like, because I think what most Russian people like the USSR, right? Most of them wanted to come back, right?
That would not surprise me.
Like I'm pretty sure most of them, like especially the older generation in Russia, much prefers the pre-capitalist era, because
Mhm.
capitalism just destroyed Russia, right? Like they got absolutely fucked.
Well, there was it wasn't really, I'm not sure I would call it capitalism.
Oh
There
yeah.
were people in the Russian mafia
Mhm.
who were connected to the government who basically took all of the assets of the country.
Well, what it was, it was
Privatized, but it was privatized, but in a way such that a tiny number of oligarchs ended up owning everything.
well, no, essentially what I think it was shock capitalism. So the capitalism happened too fast. They couldn't
I don't think the
slowly.
capitalism happened too fast. I think it had to do with the way in which the Russian mafia got control of all of the
Mhm.
assets of the state. That's where the Russian oligarchs come from.
Mm, yeah. I mean, I think that system is going to break down. I think though,
The oligarch system?
in Russia, yes, I think Russia will. I think Russia is going to become more democratic. I do believe that. I think the short term
Maybe.
Ukraine, because the thing is, like they've done it before, right? Russia loves revolutions, so it's like Putin is very close to a revolution. I think if he keeps messing around with Ukraine, because in Ukraine, the issue is drone warfare. It's such a complex. Like Putin had this mindset of he's gonna go in there with tanks and like World War II technology and take over the country, and that didn't work, right? And he thought, oh,
Right.
the West isn't gonna care. Now look, Europe's like blowing up now with defense technology because they want to kill Russians, right? So Russia really
Yeah,
thought.
I would be more on Russia's side than the EU's side if there was a war between the two. But the EU is more powerful than Russia, so that probably would not work.
Well, I mean, Germany's back, which is good to see. Germany finally brought back. They got so scared of Russia that they bring back their defense manufacturing. And there's also India, right? The play between India and Russia and China, right?
Hmm.
India's kind of the deciding factor if America can win like a long-term geopolitical battle against China, right?
Yeah, I'm just not sure what we're even battling for at this point. The American government doesn't represent me, and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't seem the American government seems to have no interest in doing anything but harming me as an American. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't see why I should be interested in the American government winning some kind of
Well, I
conflict
mean,
with China.
the thing is, they're never going to lower taxes, right? That's one of the biggest things. I think if you're a libertarian, you always notice over history they're just increasing the taxes and the rules and regulations. And I assume you've seen Palantir, of course, right? I mean, everyone's aware of the NSA and their track.
I know a little bit about it. They've developed software to track people on the internet, right?
I mean, it's so much now. Like it's kind of insane. Like and they were supposed to be using this on terrorists and like actual threats to American democracy, but the opposite happened, where now they're using it on like normal American citizens. And
That's not very surprising. That's how it always goes.
yeah, I mean, it is always, but it is very grim, right? The Chinese threat, uh, and I guess you are right. You know, if America was to fall, how much would it mean for everyone? For like, it would mean most of the elites in our country, right? The people who own, you know, I think what like 80% of the stock market is in like 20% of people's like ownership, right?
I I would guess it's even more concentrated
Yeah,
than that.
like
But I
most
don't
of.
think that 20% of Americans are elites.
Mhm. Well, what would you put the percentage at?
Well, I don't think that elite status lines up exactly with wealth. I think there's the ruling class. Excuse me. The ruling class is this politically connected group. Like, for example, I think the niece or the daughter of Jane Goodall did
Mm-hmm.
this thing where she sailed really far away with a in a sailboat, and this
Mm-hmm.
got massive coverage in the mainstream media.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that she got massive coverage in the mainstream media has a lot to do with the fact that she is a blood relative of Jane Goodall. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there are other people doing extreme sports that don't get covered in the New York Times.
Right. It was a familiar connection.
So I think that people like Jane Goodall and the faculty at the Ivy League and the people who write for the New York Times, they're all part of this ruling class set.
Mm-hmm.
And even though, of course, none of them are poor, but even though many of them are not in the top 0.1% of income, and many of them are probably not even in the top 1% of income,
Mm-hmm.
they
They're so
still have, they
right.
hold the reins of political power. And
Uh,
if you are in the top 0.1% of income, like if you make $1 million a year, but you're an insurance salesman in Kansas, you're really not part of the ruling class.
mm-hmm.
And if you wanted to get political power, you would have to spend a lot of money.
And local
Have to give
officials.
a ton. You would have to give a lot of money to your local congressman, and they still wouldn't listen to you as much as they listen to the New York Times editorial page.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's I assume you've seen what Barry West is doing at the Free Press, correct?
I like what she's doing with the free press. Yes, she is
Mhm.
very much from the ruling class, but I like to see
Right.
this
It's
fault
counter.
line. You know,
Yeah.
there's this fault line within the ruling class where because she's very pro-Israel, she's now created this pro-Israel site called
Mm-hmm.
the Free
Right.
Press, which is a um
Semi-conservative, I guess you'd say.
I wouldn't even call it semi-conservative. I would say it's maybe centrist, but
Mm-hmm.
it is distinguished from the New York Times and the
Right.
Washington Post and the
Because
Wall
it's
Street Journal.
incredibly pro-Israel, of course.
Yeah, and they're just
One issue.
willing to touch a bunch of other subjects as
Yeah.
well, like transgender issues.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that it's a way for ruling class people to like break with the groupthink without actually having to abandon their tribe. They can have their own thing over at the Free Press.
Right. Well, I like that's yeah. I mean, that's like the biggest newsletter or like news organization that counters the New York Times, I'd say. You know, Vox is like the progressive. You know, I
I would
see.
say Vox is very much in the same boat as the New York Times.
Yeah, it's like progressive slop.
Yeah.
You know, it's just
I wonder how big the Free Press's readership is. I'm going to look it up.
I don't know. I think it's getting bigger day by day. I know that. I know that what do you call it? David Ellison was supposed to get CNBC and then put her in. Like she was supposed to get some kind of like she was gonna try to sell it.
CBS, I
Yeah.
think.
Oh, CBS. Yeah.
CBS, yeah. If she becomes the head of CBS, that is a big deal. It
Yeah.
says 136,000 paid subscribers on Substack. I don't know what the ratio of paid subscribers to all readers is.
But it's also content wise. Their content is much more like I would say open minded and like actually academically
Right.
challenging than the New York Times. Like I haven't read a New York Times article in like because it's just opinion. It's not news. You know,
Right.
it's not even like they're not even trying to ask the question of like, oh, should we question like say transgender rights or the importance of trans like it's
And it's also written in, they write it in a very literary way. So it's
mhm,
almost like a form of literary entertainment rather than just news and opinion.
mhm,
For example, in the New York Times, whenever they take someone's picture, they're like looking to the side or like looking very pensive. It's
right.
extremely dramatic. It's kind of over the top.
Mhm. Another thing is like you were talking about elitism and how like a rich person and like a yeah, basically a rich person in the middle of nowhere has no political power because all most political power in America is focused in the north and focused in the
The
northwestern.
Northeast.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Washington D.C., New York.
That's
Uh,
changing a little bit with Silicon Valley, but well, and Hollywood's in California as well.
I
And
would say
also,
it's very minimal, actually.
yeah, and even Hollywood, a lot of well, the a lot of the influences
Or
of
yeah,
Hollywood came, a lot of the people who built Hollywood were Jews from New York City who moved out to
mhm,
California to make movies. So
right.
there's some cultural connection there.
Yeah, I mean, I think LA culture as a whole is mostly left wing,
Hmm.
right? So it's always, it's always, oh, who cares about societal rules? You know, like they're happy to have abortions. Like to them, having an abortion is like something to brag about. It's like crazy. Like down in the
It's a
South,
very disturbed culture.
yeah, it's like I don't know. It's like so weird. Like most women would not brag about, oh yeah, I had to go through like a surgery and do all that, right? I think the solution to abortion is literally just make the pill more accessible and uh, you know,
That is
probably
happening. The abortion pill was only legalized, I think, in the year 2000,
yeah.
and it has steadily increased in use and now makes up more than 50% of abortions. So I think we
Yeah.
will see a decline in,
That and more sex education, I would say, generally those two things would secure the
maybe they've had the sex education for a long time and it didn't seem to do a lot. But um, yeah, the abortion pill, I think, is going to lead to a decline in in-person abortion
Mhm.
visits.
Mhm. I mean, my worry would be two things. I'm not quite religious. I do believe that the child that is being aborted, I do believe they are a child. I'm pretty sure most doctors and like actual scientific medical people generally agree to them that is life. Whether or not the average like you said, most people are brainwashed by the New York Times, so they just say some shit like, "Oh, you know, kill the fetus" or whatever, right? Like I've seen these kind of things online.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
think some of it
confusing.
also is negative polarization. I think
Mhm,
that a lot of things liberals believe are negative polarization against conservatives or what they think conservatives believe.
mhm.
The the celebrating abortion is totally an example of that. Like for a long
Right.
time, almost
'Cause
nobody
there's no
was
reason for it.
pro-abortion.
There's no reason for it. I mean,
Yeah, and even
that's
the language pro-choice originated because in the 90s politicians didn't want to say they were in favor of abortion. They used
yeah.
the
I mean, it
pro-choice
is hard
language.
to tell. Yeah.
But then over time being pro-choice becomes part of people's political identity,
Mhm.
and it's part of the identity of their community to be against the evangelical
Right. There's
conservatives.
there's almost two Americas now: the liberal one and the
I
conservative
think
one.
that it's always been like that to some extent. I think so. The people of the Northeast came from a different part of England than the people in the South,
Mhm.
and the a lot of the cultural differences that we have still today are from the
Right.
1600s and 1700s.
Mhm.
Like the um, you can look at voting maps today, and the like some of the voting patterns still line up with the settlement patterns of different waves of
Mhm.
people from
Immigrants.
England 400 years ago. So to some extent there were or even the Civil War is a good example.
Mhm.
The Civil War was largely an ethnic war between these two different groups of English people who came to
Mhm.
America, and slavery was the catalyst of the war. It was the issue
Mhm.
which instigated the war, but
Right.
the conflict between the North and the South is way older than that.
Right. But it's more economical and cultural, even one could argue. Yeah.
No, I don't think that economics was a big part of the American Civil War.
Mhm.
I think it
Or you
was.
think
I think it
about it
was
from a
an
seven.
ethnic. I think it was an ethnic conflict that was instigated by the slavery issue.
Mhm. I don't know. I would actually downplay I don't like even Texas. Texas swinged um, towards the Confederacy, but like the thinking here was less about the slaves and more just about economics, right? It's like very clearly all these farm like it was an agricultural society versus a manufacturing society. You know, the North was already manufacturing, the South was not, and you were basically telling the South, hey, no more farm labor. Boom, you know, and you
But
did see
wait, so
after,
you're saying no more farm labor because no more slavery?
yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
Again, I think slavery is wrong, but I think what would have slowly happened is I think eventually the South would realize, oh shit, we do have to give these people rights eventually. So it would have probably just gone to sharecropping or some form out of that.
Maybe so.
Yeah, because I would say naturally, like Western ideology usually expands freedoms over time. Usually.
Well, I'm not sure though, because I think that some of the things which are called Western ideology are more like Puritan Northeastern American ideology.
Hmm.
And I think that they became powerful in the broader West because those people won a lot of wars. They won the American Civil War and then they won World War II. So they got to impose their ideology on all of America and Europe.
Well, I think most people understand Southern kindness. Uh, you know.
Yeah. Well, here's another example. So shortly after the Civil War, um, the Supreme Court declared polygamy unconstitutional,
Mhm,
which, or rather, they said the federal government had the authority to ban polygamy, which was a
mhm,
big deal because there was polygamy actively going on in Utah at that time,
mhm.
which
Right.
was the Mormons had moved out there. Well, it was still part of Mexico, but it was uninhabited.
Uh-huh.
And they had built this flourishing society in Utah that
Uh-huh.
wanted to join the United States, but they weren't being accepted for statehood because of the polygamy issue. And also, the Supreme Court said that, or I think maybe somebody in Utah sued saying that it was his freedom of religion to practice polygamy as a Mormon, and
Uh-huh.
then the Supreme Court struck it down. But the
Right.
point, though, is that Lincoln had actually allowed the Mormons in Utah to believe that they were going to be allowed to keep practicing polygamy. And
Mhm,
then shortly after the Civil War, the Union just was in the position of power to force the Mormons to stop doing that.
mhm,
The Republican Party platform around that time had a specific plank that said, "We are against those two relics of barbarism, slavery and polygamy."
mhm,
So these modern Western values, like anti-polygamy and anti-slavery, they are things that were explicitly fought for uh, by by the Northeasterners, which at that time were represented by the Republican Party.
mhm. Right, and the Southern kind of KKK was, of course, Democratic. And that flipped and
Yeah, I think it's silly to like associate that with the modern Democrat Party, but
mhm,
yes, the KKK was a response to the Union occupation of the South during Reconstruction. And then
right.
there was a resurgent KKK around the 1910s, 1920s.
Mhm,
And then the KKK that people think about in like the 1960s was mostly not real. That was an attempt at a third resurgence, which mostly sold
well, how
robes like a pyramid scheme, but they didn't actually do very much.
how do you think the racism of the past has turned into, like, the Groyper movement today? I assume you know who Nicholas
I
Groyper is.
think they're actually totally unrelated. I
Really?
think that, yeah, I think that 10 years ago or 15 years ago, that like the old school of racism was almost totally dead.
Mhm,
And the online stuff is a reaction against liberal hegemony. It's a reaction against what we now call wokeism. I think that the people who call themselves neo-Nazis today, like on the internet or groypers, they are a lot like people who are raised in evangelical Christian households and call themselves
mhm,
Satanists. They're
uh-huh.
they're raised with this idea
Reactionary,
that, oh, this is the ultimate
right. Mhm,
villain. So if you're a young person and you want to rebel, you can say you're a Satanist or you can
mhm,
say you're a neo-Nazi.
mhm.
So yeah,
Well,
I think it's actually totally unrelated. I think it's a new thing that has come up with the internet. However, many of those people then, of course, do reach out to older KKK people and learn about what they believed.
mhm, right. One could predict maybe today that there might be a resurgence in the KKK in the upcoming decades, maybe because of the Groyper movement, because of
Um,
a little bit, maybe
I think it's unlikely. I think that the era of the KKK is
over.
is over. That aesthetic is not popular at all among online right-wing people. I do think there will be an upsurge in neo-Nazi sentiment. For some reason, the neo-Nazi movement seems to be much more appealing to people than other forms than the American style of racism.
Right. Well, I mean, I think like the slippery slope. I think you wrote a piece on this where it was like conservative IQs versus liberal IQs, and
Hmm.
conservative intellectualism versus liberal intellectualism. So liberals hyper focus on race politics and identity politics, and then the issue for us conservatives is I think too many of us read eugenics, right? Too many conservatives get into eugenics stuff or race based stuff where we start trying to break down things. Like I recently saw a paper where it was like, oh, um, like different American race groups uh, should be like put into different industries. It was like the most it was like the most stupid shit I've ever
Where
seen.
did you read that paper?
I think it was like another conservative blogger. I don't know who it was. It was like a
Okay.
or something like that.
Not an academically published paper.
Not an academic one, of course.
Okay.
No one in like a.
I actually think it's the opposite. I don't think mainstream conservatives are interested in race and genetics enough.
Mhm,
Because again, I think 15 years ago there was none of that. I live near DC now. I sometimes go to these think tank events.
mhm.
None of them will
I've read
say
that.
anything about race and genetic.
They're scared. Yeah, they're scared.
They won't even talk about genetics in a non-racial context. They won't
Right.
even talk about heredity of like some individuals being smarter than others. And I
Mhm.
think that some of them like have read the bell curve and do kind of know what's going on, but some of them
Right.
really don't. The
Mhm.
younger ones especially, I think, really don't. And so I think that actually there is a like Republican American conservative ideology which is not about race at all.
Mhm.
And people who like that ideology, they want to defend their views on the merits. They have like the Thomas Sowell view that we should be caring about culture, which I largely agree with.
Right. Well,
So then when you accuse them of being like a closet race hater, they say, no, no, you don't understand. I believe all this other stuff. And I actually agree with them on a lot of that other stuff. But I think
mhm.
because of that, there's a pathological unwillingness to talk honestly about genetics and to talk honestly about race and Republicans. So contrary to popular belief, I think that mainstream conservatives in the think tanks are are like race denialists. I don't think that they're closet racialists. I think that they have the opposite problem. They're not racialist enough.
Mhm. Right. Well, I would say that's probably just a lack of reading, probably. Like I said, the
Some of
book.
it's lack of reading for the well, but also, it's impossible to read every book in the world. So I did not know about race, and I didn't really even think about the heritability of IQ until I was about 23, when I
Mhm.
just stumbled across some video lectures on it on Stefan
Mhm.
Molyneux's YouTube channel. I
Mhm.
thought, okay, well, that I was skeptical at first, but I learned more about it, and I thought, okay, that this makes sense.
Mhm.
People who don't hang out on Stefan Molyneux's YouTube channel would not have seen it. Now, of course, in the last 10 years, there's been this huge explosion on social media of the online right,
Right.
including a lot of new knowledge, a lot of awareness, public
Mhm.
awareness of race science.
Right.
So, yeah, some people are probably genuinely unaware.
Well, I don't know.
Some people, I
I
think,
got
are maybe just avoiding the issue.
I got into the race thing probably around 18 or 17 because when I was in high school, I spent a lot of time reading. I was just in the library all the time, so I really got into like Nazism, especially the studying of Nazism and
Hmm.
how like because the Nazis built their understanding of eugenics and race on the American understanding. So they actually looked at our Civil War era like eugenics program and built their own
It was
on
a
that.
Civil War era eugenics program. I haven't heard this
Yeah,
one.
like the way we analyze skulls. Like down in the South, we analyze skulls as a way to say good slaves from bad slaves and to separate why
I know
white.
the Nazis denied IQ.
I don't know about that part, but
Yeah, they had IQ tests, but they saw that Jews got higher IQ scores than
oh,
Germans.
and then yeah, they didn't
Then they
like you.
made up a fake
Yeah.
German intelligence test that the Germans did better on.
Mhm.
Um, and also, the Nazis had a bunch of non-scientific,
Mm.
esoteric beliefs. Like
Yeah.
they believed that the Aryans came from the middle of the Atlantic Ocean from an island called Atlantis. They thought
Mhm.
they came from there rather than from the Russian
Right.
steppes. Some of them believed that the Earth was hollow, and they believed it
Mhm.
was inhabited by these people called the Vril, and they thought if
Mhm.
you went to the North Pole, you could go inside the hollow Earth.
Mhm.
So they
It was
believed in
just
a bunch of wacky, unscientific stuff. I had not heard that they followed phrenology from America.
but it was so interesting to me at a young age, like the Nazis, because like as a concept, it's like we dealt with the communists, but like historically, we always understood the Nazis as the worst kind of example of human. Like we didn't think the communists were that bad, even though they committed a genocide of similar numbers, just
Right.
not race based, right? The Nazis focused on the Jews and gypsies, whereas like the Soviet Union did gypsies. They killed gypsies the same as Nazis did. They had the
Hmm.
same thesis, but they didn't hyper specific on Jews and didn't hyper specific on like doing the Holocaust. They just killed them. They didn't do well. I mean, they did have Siberian
I
labor.
think the reason why the Nazis are viewed less favorably is just because of propaganda. I think that there was a lot of wartime propaganda, like there isn't
That's still
anymore.
around. Yeah, it's still around.
Still around, yes.
Like
But
it's crazy.
that's where the vilification of the Nazis came from. And then also there were a lot of communists infiltrating the American government and the
Mhm.
American intelligentsia and the
But
universities
I would also
and
say it's something on the
establishments in
left.
Hollywood.
The left believes Nazism is an extension of the right wing ideology, whereas
Right. I think the left is just ironically, I think they're wrong about that. I
yeah,
think
they're
it's
national
creating a
socialists.
self-fulfilling
Yeah,
prophecy.
Hitler was a socialist.
Yes.
He's not a
Yeah.
right winger.
If you went back to 2010, like the people who loved Ronald Reagan, they genuinely don't really have anything at all to do with Nazism or Nazi
Right, they're
ideology.
like complete opposites. Yeah.
But the left falsely believes that they do.
Uh
And
huh.
so when the left made Nazism into the ultimate villain, then the next generation of online nonconformists wanted to align themselves with those.
Love Nazism. Right. That's such a
So,
weird. Yeah. I don't know. I of course disagree with what Hitler did. But it is always an interesting case study of how politics works. And it's like it's interesting how Hitler took the elites of his country and basically offered them the bargain of, hey, if you give me power and give me a dictatorship, I will give you some return to greatness. Like it shows you the desperations that human society and the elites of our country can go to, right? And like that's one of my fears. Like I think in America, we might get like a leftist example or a communist like example of Hitler, who basically says something like, "Hey, I will offer you neoliberal capitalism that actually works, you know, and like I'll fix all the problems."
I'm hopeful that we are past the era of dictators like that. Because in my opinion, I think the centralized state is going to gradually go away. Because the reason why the centralized state came into existence in the first place was because of gunpowder. So a
Mhm,
thousand years ago, there was nothing like the centralization that we have today. There
mhm.
were a bunch of different
Thieves and yeah,
lords with their
right,
fiefs, and even
right.
individuals had a like there would be some individual knight who would have a lot of
Mhm,
power over his own.
right.
Um, and of course, there was also the church and the Roman Empire, but the thing that really caused the centralization was gunpowder.
Mhm,
Because with gunpowder, there was a big return to having these large professional armies. So it
mhm,
increased the power of the king relative to the local lords.
mhm,
And also, if you have gunpowder cannons, then having a castle is no longer a very good defense. So if you're
mhm,
a lord, you can't just sit in your castle forever.
mhm,
And then the existence of the centralized state, in my opinion, was continued by mass communication technology like radio.
mhm,
So they had radio um, and also television. Hitler got his start from talking on radio.
mhm.
No, actually, his first speeches were covered in newspapers, but then he became big talking on
Right.
radio.
Yeah. Mhm,
Um, and in the Soviet Union, for example, every morning, I think the first thing they said on the radio was like, "Hello, this is Moscow speaking." So every
mhm.
single person in that gigantic landmass was getting some
News from Moscow.
input, some directions straight from the capital every single day.
Right.
Now we have the internet, so
Uh-huh.
that centralizing power of radio and TV
Possible.
is no longer possible.
Uh-huh.
And I think we're seeing this with the breakup of power of the mainstream media. I think that the alternative media is going to get more and more powerful, and I think they're going to, I hope that they will start building their own communities so they have a physical community in addition to an online community.
Right.
And the more that people build local institutions, I don't mean local like just your local city government. I mean like organic people with
Right.
similar ideas getting together.
No, no.
The more
Right.
people build those real civic institutions, the weaker the de jure government is.
Mhm.
And I think that I don't think that the government in America right now really has the stomach to send out the army to crush people like it used to. Even
Hmm.
something like do you know about the Waco massacre in the 90s?
Yeah, I'm aware of it.
Even something like that would be a way bigger deal today because now we
Hmm.
have social media. If the Waco massacre happened today, there would be 24/7 video of it
Hmm.
while it was happening. Every single detail of everything the FBI did would be caught on video and broadcast to conservatives, and it would get picked up by Matt Walsh, and
Right.
millions of people would hear about it and they would see about it on social media. That was not possible at the time because we didn't have the technology at the time.
I mean, you've seen Trump say that he might deploy National Guard to Chicago. You have seen that, right?
This is an example, though, of what I'm talking about. There are people resisting the ICE officers, and the deportations are not very successful. They're
Uh-huh.
deporting a small number of people per day. It's not enough to put a serious dent in overall immigration.
Yeah, because
Trump is trying to do the centralized state strategy, and it's not
you
working.
can't do it in 4 years though. It's almost like Biden let in I know what it is. Biden
Right,
let in so many, and
right.
it's almost impossible. Like even if he did do a good job,
But also, they just don't have the public support behind them. It's
right?
very easy to take these heart-wrenching videos of some person being dragged out of their
Mhm.
car, and lots of a strong majority of
And just
Americans
playing it
oppose
in the
these
right
ICE
way. Yeah.
raids. So yeah, I don't think that the government actually has the stomach to enforce its power at gunpoint,
Hmm.
which means that people are free basically to challenge the government and form their own communities. That's what I think we should do.
Right. Well, you know about Seattle and the I think it was like the Chome thing
The
where they actually,
Chaz.
yeah, chat, yeah, they formed their own country for a while or something like that, and it was like
Yeah,
completely
those were a bunch of deranged Antifa people who just
right.
would not be able to create anything functional. So
Right.
I think we can
Well,
do a better job than
like
the
you
Chaz.
would say like more that's gonna happen.
No, I don't think so. I think there's going to be more things like Return to the Land, which is the group that's creating these all-white farms in parts of
Mhm.
Arkansas and other states. They're
Mhm.
creating these intentional communities of people who have similar values and want to live together. And I think we're
Right.
going to see a lot more of that.
So more leftist communes and more right
Yeah,
wing.
I think there'll be more communes.
Mhm.
And also, it's not just communes. We'll see more people try to build like institutions that are not just one community. Like
Mhm.
Give, Send, Go is actually a good example. So the reason why Give, Send, Go exists is that there used to be this website called GoFundMe, but
Mhm. Certain people, yeah.
they started taking down people who were conservative. So then these other programmers created a rival site called Give, Send, Go.
Uh-huh.
And so now it is much easier than it used to be for right-wing people to raise money.
I don't know. On the commune thing, I would say in modern America, more the youth will be socialistic or will get into communist or Marxist texts, but I don't think people will actually become more community focused, right? Like I think Americans will actually
I
become
don't
more.
think communists are community focused at all.
Uh-huh.
I think communists are like opportunist people who would otherwise be criminals, but they have this ideology that rationalizes their desire to take other people's stuff. And then
Mhm.
they meet the
Yeah,
other people who would be disposed to be criminals and they make
they
these
don't
groups.
believe in capitalism. Yeah, they just think we're kind of living in an end
Or
stage
even
cap.
like the Cuban Revolution, for example, they call it a revolution. The way that one of the big ways it succeeded was that they bribed a guard with like $10,000. The Cuban Revolution was more of a coup than a
Yeah.
revolution. I believe even the Bolshevik Revolution was as well.
Mhm.
So it's more like there are these. I think that communism, it's not so much an ideology or an economic system like capitalism. It's more akin to a mafia. It's
Mhm.
the communists were these organized groups of malicious people who killed their enemies and behaved like an organized crime group.
Mhm. I would generally agree with that thesis, yes. But like you have to understand most most like you say most higher academia in America reads Marxist texts. They care more about, those kinds of things.
Do they even read Marx anymore, or do they read some kind of postmodern drag
Post
queen
yeah.
thesis?
Um no, most of them have I think most leftist, most intellectual leftist people and even at the DNC, I mean, these people do quote Marx. They
Okay.
do believe in like Marxian because like that's where a lot of the race and like identity stuff comes
From Marx?
from Marx. They hyper focus on like, oh, you know, it's so unfair or unequal that you weren't born this way or and we should
Hmm.
fix that. Society should help you and equalize it for everyone and make it equal opportunities or whatever. It's like
What did you see when you were with the D when you were in the DNC? Were there more technocrat people or were there more postmodern people?
post. I mean, it's less people with skills and more people with like charisma and who have a better understanding of ideology and philosophy. Right? Like they understand if you frame things in an emotional way, you can win. Right? That's why they
Oh,
frame
but I
every.
mean, is their ideology the technocrat ideology of someone like, well, I don't know how sincere he is, but what Ezra Klein claims to believe, or is it more like the postmodern
The
drag queen ideology?
it's still woke. Like it, Kamala was like the final like because like I saw the GLAD people. You know what GLAD is? It's like this
Yeah.
like it's like this hyper trans like gay rights organize but it's like
I assume that they modeled themselves after the ADL.
yeah, but the thing is like I asked a lot of gay donors, do they feel represented by it? And they told me point blank no. Like a
Okay.
lot of them donors themselves didn't actually like the organization. They just did it because they were pressured into it.
They donated to the organization.
Because they were pressured into it.
Okay, so you're not talking about people who donate to the DNC but don't like GLAD. You're talking about people
Yeah,
who donate
because
to GLAD.
those are like yeah, those are like DNC associated organizations. Like nobody thinks they're Democrat, but come on, they're clearly Democratic run. You know.
So you're saying there were these gay donors who didn't like GLAD, but they felt pressured into donating to GLAD anyway, and they did it.
Yep.
Wow.
That's probably like the biggest thing that I saw that I was like, oh wow, that to me shows the hypocrisy that like it's like the I think JD talked about it. JD Vance talked about like the what was it? The gay guy, the normal gay guy vote, where it's like even they realize how. Like I think that's a good litmus. Like what you just asked me, where you said, are they like Ezra Klein liberals, where they actually care about economics and like actual, you know, like stuff that's actually important, or do they just care about cultural issues and wokeism? Even the kind of like the gay people and like the trans. I mean, like even lesbians kind of like Barry West. She realized that they fundamentally, the liberals nowadays in the DNC and the Democrat Party as a whole, only care about cultural issues and identity politics instead of offering real solutions. They can't offer anything politically serious, right? For 40 years, like glad now.
Yeah, I think it's what the Democrats are doing, though. It's not just they're not just cultural issues. A lot of it is like a race war against straight white men.
Yeah, I
They're
mean that's
trying
yeah.
to figure out how to extract as many resources as possible from
Mm,
straight white men. And I think that that kind of ethnic tribal aggression is a
mm.
very powerful glue for sticking a movement together. Even if the different people in it have a lot of totally incoherent and diverging interests on other things, tribalism does stick people together.
Yeah. But no, I would say they're hyper focused on woke. I think it's like
Okay.
the Ezra Klein thing and the Reid Hoffman funds Ezra Klein, right? So that's a neoliberal capitalism thing where they're trying to go away from the wokeness thing and bring it back to okay, let's
Mhm.
focus on housing, let's focus on energy, let's focus on like actual problems. That's mostly a donor thing. The donors want to do that. The actual party, like the actual
Okay.
voters,
That's interesting.
they're already like the actual organizers of the party are already so woke, right? Kamala in her
And
recent
by organizers, you mean like community
leaders, yeah,
organizers who lead the door knocking.
yeah, like they're politically themselves so woke already, they can't understand the concept of talking about actual issues, right? So
Hmm.
Kamala in her recent book, she didn't talk about, oh yeah, like oh shit, I ran a political campaign that was too politically woke or too focused on identity politics, right? She didn't say, oh shit, maybe we shouldn't like not brought on Beyonce and Cardi B and like all these random celebrities.
I
And
read Jesse Singal's review of a chapter of her book.
uh-huh.
So
And she just complains, she just
Kamala Harris was talking about the ad that said Kamala is for they, them, President Trump is for you.
mhm.
And there's one um, there was one image in that ad of
Hmm.
a 50-something-year-old, like 6'6" man standing
Hmm.
next to college girls because this 50-something man was on the college girls basketball team.
Uh,
And when Kamala Harris recounted that, she like initially framed it as if Republicans were complaining about him being old. Like, oh,
uh-huh.
he didn't fit in because he went to college later in life after being in the army. So it's it's a level of misdirection which is just insane. And
Right.
it sounds like, yeah, I guess if they're younger staffers or all these hyper woke people, they can't be honest about it even after they lost.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a different lingo. Like if you even say like, remember when Biden was? I think he was like asked the question of how many genders are there on news, right? And Biden hilariously says at least three,
At least three. Okay, so that's a safe answer. He's not saying two,
and it's
and he's
like
not saying a million. So
Bi-
three.
Biden in his heyday was like a semi like he was always a Democrat for sure, but it's like his views on drug policy. He was not a progressive person in the past, right? He's
Well, I
not,
don't think Biden ever had real views. Biden was a pathological liar for his whole
right,
life. Like he had this one story where he claimed that he went to South Africa and like protested outside the prison where Nelson Mandela was being held, and then Nelson Mandela like met him later and said, "Thanks, Joe, for helping me out there."
right, wasn't true.
It turned out that like people found out that Mandela had been in prison 1,000 miles away from where Biden was, and then the White House had to come out and admit like, okay, he actually made all that up.
Well, yeah, I mean he
And
was.
when there was another thing where Biden also like claimed that he'd graduated at the top of his class when he
Yeah.
didn't. He also claimed that during the AIDS crisis, the he went to black neighborhoods and like started giving people condoms. Like the story was that Joe Biden, as like a
Right.
sitting senator, like went door to door trying to give black people condoms,
But
which doesn't
it's
sound very believable
but
to
like
me.
right, a progressive person would believe that, right? Like if you told a real
Maybe. I think he's a very opportunistic politician.
right, but it's like a field of reality distortion on the left.
Hmm.
Like on the right, we're very realistic about how fucked we are. Everyone realizes the American empire is in decline. The liberals are focused on the wrong issues. Then the conservative world is kind of just like, I would say, split still. It's very broken down. It's not as like top down as the DNC and like the left wing organizations are, right? They've really got a consolidation on American institutional power, and what you talked about with the New York Times. They really understand that investing in education and academia, right? They control academia. They
Hmm.
control, like, say, I'm pretty sure you wrote something along like this, where you said that liberals control basically most of the major institutions in America, right? And and like, you know, like it's crazy that our president could say these things, right? He could say, "Oh yeah, there's three genders, maybe." "Oh
At
yeah,"
least three.
and like it's just, I don't know. It's just
Even 400 years ago, so the people of the Northeast 400 years ago were Puritans. They were essentially a religious cult who
Mhm.
were sort of kicked out of England, so they came to America. And even 300, yeah, about 300 years ago,
Which is
the
a
people in
thing.
the South thought
Mhm.
that the Northeasterners were prone to fanaticism. They thought that
Right.
they had a cultish attitude that was just kind of innate in them.
Mhm. Well, I mean, the South, I think, is we're too aristocratic, and then we're too maybe, yeah. I mean,
Well, they had plenty of their own problems. Yeah, I just think
yeah.
it's the fanaticism that we see on the left, I think has very, very deep roots.
Uh-huh. Right. I mean, it's herd thinking. On the right, like within the right, you see debates, you see conversation of like,
Yeah.
okay, like forever wars, like what there's a debate on war and conflict, whereas on the left, like as soon as Joe Biden said, "Hey, we're gonna go into Ukraine," nobody asked why. Nobody asked, "Hey, maybe we should think about it."
Right, and that was a big shift going from being the anti-war party to the pro-war party.
Right. And like what they pull out of I think it was it Iraq or. or
The
I don't know.
pullout out of Afghanistan.
Afghanistan, yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. Like it still shocked my mind. We were in Afghanistan. You know, I know Bush got us in there, and then we never. Obama was
Yeah,
the
I think the initial invasion of Afghanistan was justified because the 9/11 attackers did come from there, or some of them did at least.
right,
So I think it was justified to retaliate, but yes, they should have retaliated and then been gone within 6 months, not stayed there for
right,
20 years.
right. Because like the Dick Cheney plan was to stay around and to build this like post like it's such
In
ridiculous.
Afghanistan?
Like yeah, DC and these neocon Republicans thought they could bring democracy to these countries.
Yeah, that's
Right. And the underlarging issue under that, like, oh, okay, like, oh, we're gonna bring these people to democracy was the oil, and if we build infrastructure, we can get all the money we spent, sending the troops over there.
hmm.
That never happened. It just turned more like we built infrastructure, but we also kept troops, but the infrastructure became shit. And then the troops like we,
And
we
it was
need
not
more,
it in the end it was non-American companies that got the oil contracts after they
right.
reached the oil
Yeah.
fields.
Yeah. The locals got like I'm pretty sure like the funniest example was like we literally paid them to grow heroin. You
That
know?
was in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like it's so ridiculous. Like it, you know, and it's crazy. Like these are the people. Like when Dick Cheney was saying this stuff in the 2000s, everyone was looking at him and clapping their hands. Right? Everyone was like, "Yeah, we're gonna bring these people democracy. The Middle East is never gonna have war again." And now we look, and it's like we've got Iran trying to carve up power. Saudi Arabia is trying to carve up power. Israel's going through a thing, right? Like the Middle East today is still as chaotic as it was 20 years ago. Even more. I would argue more than it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, I think that the impetus to get America involved in those wars in the Middle East, in Iraq at least, was the Israel lobby.
Mm-hmm.
Because while the Middle East as a whole is more chaotic than it was 20 years ago, Israel's position is
Improved,
actually better. I mean,
right?
they might be running out their PR because of the Gaza issue now, but certainly before October 7th, Israel was in a very strong position, the strongest position
Right.
it had ever been in, because Saddam Hussein was
The biggest threat.
one of the big, maybe the biggest regional threat to Israel, and the U.S. took him out. And then Assad was, or Assad's regime was sort of a
Yeah.
threat, but he's now gone as well. So Iran
Right.
is the last one.
Well, he's still alive in Russia.
He is, thankfully, he's still alive, but his regime is.
Hopefully they bring him back. I actually had a counter belief that the United States should have supported him, actually kept him there. But hey,
I would have been in favor of that. Yeah.
yeah, because because the guy we're dealing with now, I think he's a Syrian. He's
As an Al Qaeda member.
like we're literally dealing with the terrorist.
Yeah.
Like we were fighting this guy like 10 years ago, and now we're on the same side. And it's like, come on.
That's the source of part of my apathy towards the American government's fight with China. Like the people fighting these geostrategic battles are just not doing a good job, and they don't care about my interest anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we are coming up on an hour, so this was a fun conversation. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, I think we've overall learned China is a scary threat. Liberals are kind of confused, and then right wing intellectualism is probably broken, right? So too sporadic, but you hope that institutions will grow, and
I am hopeful that institutions can grow, and I am trying to play my small part in that.